Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
I remember exactly how it all started for me. An image on her phone. A simple snapshot of the two of them at some late afternoon gathering I didn't even know had happened. She was wearing a gold bracelet I'd bought her on our 5th anniversary, leaning in close to him, eyes bright, her lips parted in that delighted smile she used to reserve for me. And the man with his arm around her shoulder was Mark, my friend, or so I believed back then. I was standing by the kitchen counter, her phone lying there unlocked. She must have gone upstairs for a quick shower, because I heard the water running. I didn't pick up the phone at first. I just glanced down. I saw the thumbnail of a photo, her face, his face, so close together. I recognized that carefree tilt of her head, something she seldom did anymore when we were alone. My heart clenched. I don't even know how long I stood there, staring at it. Then my hand moved on its own. I pressed and held the screen. The photo popped open. I saw him, Mark, with that cocky tilt to his grin. She was next to him in a way she'd stopped sitting next to me. Her hand rested on his thigh. Right there in public. That was enough. I felt something shatter inside my chest. I could almost taste the betrayal. My first impulse was to fling her phone against the wall. Instead, I moved carefully, silent, methodical, in slow motion. I locked the phone, put it back, turned away like nothing had happened. But a fresh wave of anger coursed through me. I saw that gold bracelet glinting on her arm in the photo. I'd worked extra hours back then to get her that piece. She loved it, wore it day and night. For me, it symbolized devotion, one of those naive illusions you carry. And in that photo, it looked like a cheap prop in her new life, the one she was crafting behind my back. I barely felt the next moment. I realized my own hand was trembling, clenching something. It was her bracelet, lying on the counter next to the fruit bowl, probably taken off earlier. I lifted it, closed my fist, and squeezed. The delicate clasp snapped. In my mind, I imagined it was the sound of a final thread in our marriage giving way. The metal bit into my palm. The pain was real and strangely satisfying. A surge of adrenaline pulsed through me. Then I looked at my hand. Red marks, a couple droplets of blood, and felt strangely empty. That was the start. The day everything twisted. She came down the stairs not long after, hair wet, wearing an old college t-shirt and sweatpants. She paused in the doorway, catching sight of me standing by the sink. I was rinsing my hand, letting the water carry away the small traces of blood. She didn't ask why. Maybe she assumed I'd cut myself chopping vegetables, my usual clumsiness in the kitchen, or maybe she sensed something else was wrong. Her phone was back where she'd left it, perfectly aligned on the counter, screen locked. She said, "Hey," in a tentative way. I could hear that slight quaver in her voice, a clue that some corner of her mind suspected I'd seen something I shouldn't. But I just responded with a low grunt and dried my hand. She waited for me to say more, but I didn't. That night, I hardly spoke. She asked if I was tired. I said yes, that there'd been deadlines at work. We sat down to eat leftover pasta. She forced some conversation about her design proposals, something about a client wanting a bohemian-style living room, and I nodded without absorbing the words. Meanwhile, in the back of my head, the image kept replaying, her leaning against Mark, that affectionate press of her hip. I heard my own pulse thrumming in my ears. "Are you sure you're okay?" she asked, reaching for her glass of water. "Just stressed," I replied. "I need some quiet." She let it drop. Perhaps she was relieved not to have to elaborate on her own day. If I'd pressed her, she would have had to lie. So it suited us both to let the night pass in wordless tension. But every time she took a sip, I noticed the bare patch on her wrist. No bracelet. I wondered if she realized it was missing yet. When it was finally time for bed, she fell asleep surprisingly fast. Or at least she pretended. She lay on her side, turned away, breathing in that slow, measured rhythm. I lay on my back, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling until some dark hour of the night. The memory of the photo seared itself into my mind. I must have drifted off eventually. But the next day, my life changed. If the photo was the trigger, the next day was the bullet. That morning, as she left for an errand, I rummaged through old boxes in our spare closet. I found that battered voice recorder I'd given her back in college, back when we used to share silly messages or make mock interviews. She liked carrying it around campus. Eventually, it got shoved into storage. Now it was about to become my silent ally. I wasn't even sure if the battery still worked. But once I plugged it in, it powered on and blinked. Nostalgic. Ugly. Perfect. I placed it in a discreet corner near her workspace, behind books, set to voice activation. I didn't plan to pry into her private phone calls for the sake of prurient curiosity. I just wanted confirmation, cold, undeniable evidence. If she was honest, I find nothing. But if she was cheating, I wasn't naive. I'd seen the photo. This was about building a case, maybe for a confrontation, maybe for divorce, or maybe for something else. I wasn't sure. I wanted the truth, and if it damned her, so be it. Late that afternoon, I came home from work, heart pounding with that mixture of dread and grim excitement. She was in the living room on a video call. Something about color palettes and mood boards. It sounded legitimate enough. I slipped past, giving a small wave, and she nodded with a polite, guarded smile. In the bedroom, I opened the closet door, rummaged for the recorder. I saw the little blinking LED. That meant it had captured something. I pressed play, expecting maybe a voice note, maybe a phone call. What I heard was her laughter, softer than I remembered, followed by Mark's unmistakable drawl. He said something about how she was so done with me, and she giggled, sounding carefree, unburdened. She used the phrase, Plan B, the same phrase she'd once joked about in college, meaning a life raft in case everything else sank. Only now that Plan B was me, or rather, my departure from her life. I clenched my jaw, my pulse roaring in my ears. He asked her a question. Does he suspect anything? You think he's gonna freak out? She responded with an airy laugh. He's too busy with his spreadsheets. And he's a suitcase with a broken handle. Too heavy to carry, too precious to throw away. But not precious enough to keep. Then more laughter, the kind that seemed alien in her mouth. I found myself gripping the recorder so tight my fingers hurt. I heard them mention details of how they'd meet next time, about the hush-hush nature, the final blow. Mark's voice, intimately close to the microphone. I can't wait to have you again like last time. Her breathy whisper. Soon, I promise. My stomach turned to ice. That was the moment I realized. This wasn't just an emotional fling. It was physical. It was a done deal. My wife was sleeping with my so-called friend. And they thought I was oblivious, powerless. I wanted to storm out of the bedroom, yank her phone from her hand, and demand the truth. But I resisted. Instead, I took a breath, forced myself to calm down. I needed to see the bigger picture. I needed leverage. If she wanted a new life, if he thought he'd won, maybe there was a way for me to turn their betrayal against them. Cruel, possibly. But the fury boiling inside me left no room for mercy. The next few weeks were an odd dance. I never mentioned the photo or the taped conversation. I acted normal, or as normal as I could. She continued her routine. Calls with clients, late afternoon meetings, nights returning home with an evasive sorry it ran late. Meanwhile, I started to research Mark's finances. He'd mentioned casually once or twice that he was looking for investors in his startup. I dug deeper, discovered that he'd borrowed heavily. Mortgage on a house he barely used, car payments overdue, credit lines maxed. He was treading water. One phone call to the right people, and he'd drown. I used my expertise. I had contacts in the financial district, small-time brokers who specialized in distressed assets. Over a few carefully orchestrated transactions, I acquired control of Mark's debts. He had no clue that behind the shell companies, I was pulling the strings. By the time I was done, he owed me a tidy sum every month, as well as balloon payments in the near future. I even managed to slip a clause into one of the notes allowing me to call in the entire debt if he missed a single installment. I can't describe the grim satisfaction it gave me. It wasn't a healthy feeling, but it was potent. I was going to force him to pay, month by month, under the illusion that some faceless financial entity was his creditor. He'd write those checks in neat little lines, never knowing they landed in my account. Meanwhile, he'd be sharing a bed with my wife, presumably congratulating himself on his cleverness. But the rope around his neck would tighten with every check. One day, if I wished, I could yank that rope. My sense of wounded pride demanded vengeance, yet I also felt a perverse sense of triumph. If I couldn't keep her loyal, at least I could control the man she thought so fascinating. In the midst of it all, I started writing again. Not openly, but on the wall in our cramped storage closet. I used a thick black marker, writing lines of bitterness, confession, anger, sentences that would never pass my lips. The closet was so cluttered with old boxes that she never went in there. I suspected she felt something off, though. Sometimes she'd catch me staring, or notice the tension in my shoulders. I caught her giving me quizzical looks. She'd open her mouth, but no words came out. As if "why do you look at me like that?" hovered on her tongue. It was too big, too final a question to ask. So she didn't. Eventually, everything boiled over on a warm Friday night. She came home smelling of wine, cheeks flushed. I was in the living room, reading emails. I heard her key in the door. She stood in the entryway, purse sliding off her shoulder. "Where were you?" I asked, closing my laptop. "Client dinner," she answered automatically. But her eyes flicked sideways, the way they always do when she's dishonest. I waited a beat. "Which client?" She hesitated. The one downtown. The new condo project. I told you about them." "What's their name?" She frowned. "Why do you need all those details?" I stood up slowly, stepping around the coffee table. "Because I'm curious if this client has the same name as Mark Johnson." Her breath caught. She stared at me, her posture stiffening. I saw her entire body go on the defensive. "I'm telling you the truth," she insisted, but her voice wavered. "Then say the name," I said calmly. I moved closer. She raised her chin defiantly, but didn't speak. I watched her face turn pale as I quietly pressed. "Who was the meeting with? Why is your lipstick smeared?" "You're imagining things," she forced out. "I'm not lying. You?" I cut her off with a level voice. "Which restaurant did you go to?" "I might call them." "Ask about your table." She flinched. "Seriously, that's insane. You're acting paranoid." "Maybe. But if it's the truth, then you won't mind telling me, right? Just humor me." She tried to stand her ground, but her lower lip trembled. She looked away, struggling to come up with a half-believable lie. I let the silence stretch, carefully maintained. Finally, she exhaled, shoulders sagging. "Fine," she muttered. "You want the truth." I was having drinks with Mark, but it was innocent. That was the first time she admitted anything. I felt a tremor of anger ripple through me, but I held it down, controlling the outward show. "Innocent," I repeated, letting the question hover. She could see in my face that I wasn't buying it. Something in her eyes flickered. Fear, maybe. Or guilt. "Okay," she said, more quietly. "We're friends. That's all." I clenched my teeth. "Friends. Right. That's why you have private calls, secret photos, sneaky meetups. Because you're friends." It cost me every ounce of self-control not to explode. I pictured him touching her, the way she'd once let me. She huffed, cheeks reddening. "What do you want me to say?" "That my life's become a dull routine with you. That I needed something exciting." He offered an escape, but I never intended to. She bit her lip, then shouted, "I'm not some monster, okay?" I stared at her, my voice dropping dangerously. Escape from what? From me. The man who's paying for your lifestyle, who took care of you when you had migraines so bad you couldn't get out of bed. The man who gave you that bracelet you can't even bother to wear anymore. She automatically glanced at her wrist, then blinked as if remembering. I misplaced it, she stammered. Misplaced it. I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Yeah, you could say that. I stepped away, swallowing the anger that threatened to become physical. She took a step forward, but I put up a hand. Don't. She pressed her lips together, tears gathering in her eyes. You never listen to me. You just close off. I feel alone. I feel. Stop. My voice shook. You want me to believe you're the victim here. The memory of that recorded conversation whirled in my head, the phrase about me being the suitcase with a broken handle. You don't have the right to cry to me about feeling alone. Not after what I know. She hesitated. What do you mean? What you know? I know enough, I spat. Trust me. She swallowed, glancing at the door like she wanted to flee, then back at me. We should talk about this calmly. I'm done talking tonight. I said, voice low, angry. Get out of my sight. She almost objected. Then her shoulders sank. She turned, picking up her purse, and disappeared into the hallway. I stood there, fists clenched, hearing her footsteps fade upstairs. In the quiet that followed, I had to force myself to breathe. My heart hammered with a violent rhythm. At that moment, I wanted to destroy something. Anything. But instead, I just sank onto the couch, pressed the heels of my hands against my eyes, and sat there, swallowing wave after wave of betrayal. The next morning, I left for work early, not wanting to face her in the kitchen. I had a sour taste in my mouth, a heaviness in my limbs. On the drive downtown, I kept replaying our confrontation. In my mind, I also saw them together, intimately entwined, a sudden flash of an image I couldn't shake. Every so often, my vision would blur with rage, and I had to grip the steering wheel hard just to keep control. At the office, I tried to bury myself in spreadsheets, but I ended up stepping out for a private call. I dialed the number of the broker who managed Mark's loan. He picked up, sounding cheerful. Hey, everything good? You want me to forward the latest statements? Yes, I said shortly. Send them to my personal email. Will do. By the way, your borrower's next payment is on track, I hear. He's a prompt payer. My lip curled. Yes, he better be. We exchanged a few more words, then I hung up. As I stared at the phone, I felt that twisted satisfaction again. Mark was paying me monthly, and he had no idea. I spent the day in a restless haze, anticipating the next move, the next slip. That evening, I got home and found the house quiet. She was in the bedroom, door half shut. For a second, I wondered if she was packing. My pulse spiked. I set my briefcase down and crept closer. I heard her low voice. She was talking to someone on speakerphone. The tone urgent, subdued. I stood just outside and listened. He was suspicious last night, she whispered. I had to say something. Mark, I'm sorry. I can't leave him abruptly. It'd be a disaster. A pause. Then Mark's voice. Baby, you promised me. Don't leave me hanging here. You know how things get tense on my end. I'm paying these insane debts. I can't do it alone. I need your support. She made a frustrated sound. I know. Just let me handle him carefully. He's too methodical. If I push him, he'll do something drastic. Don't you realize, Mark said, the clock is ticking. I don't have indefinite time. That damned creditor is breathing down my neck, doubling fees. I can't keep juggling it. I want you with me. She sighed. I'll figure out a way to tell him. A wave of bitterness crashed through me. So that was the plan. She would eventually tell me she was leaving, step out of our marriage, and presumably run off to support him financially while he floundered in business. Little did they know I was the so-called creditor. The irony was almost too much to bear. I slipped away and went to my hideaway in the storage closet. I needed to let out the mounting fury. I scrawled another line on the wall with my marker, pressing so hard the tip squeaked. You think I'm clueless, but I'm your puppet master. The words glistened black and ominous in the dim light. I felt my chest rise and fall with ragged breaths. Then, slowly, I forced myself to exhale, regaining composure. Days turned to weeks. I gave her no reason to suspect I knew everything. If she asked about my late nights or my moods, I blamed work stress. If she seemed on the verge of a confession, I changed the subject, stared at her with an expression that left her off balance. She'd back down. I began to notice small tells in her behavior. She'd check her phone more often. She'd excuse herself to the other room for client calls. I'd catch her staring at me with an odd mixture of guilt and defiance. Meanwhile, I fueled my own inner darkness by listening to bits of the recordings, reading Mark's loan statements, and marking the calendar for the next payment. The tension in the house was tangible, thick as tar, suffocating. One evening, I came home to find her in the living room again, pacing. She was wearing a casual dress, her hair pulled back, barefoot. She stopped when she saw me, turned off the TV, and faced me squarely. I need to talk to you, she said, an unusual urgency in her voice. I dropped my keys on the table. Go ahead. She pressed her lips together. I'm worried about us. You're distant. I'm not happy. It feels like we're both just going through the motions. I stared at her. Aha. She bristled at my lack of reaction. You don't even care enough to argue. I shrugged, playing my part. What's there to say? If you're unhappy, you're unhappy. What do you propose? I don't know, she said, voice shaky. Maybe we need space, or counseling, or something. Counseling. The corner of my mouth twitched. Let's see. You want to sit with a stranger and talk about how we drifted. Talk about how you're in love with someone else. She froze, then stammered. Why would you say that? That's not. I stepped forward, forcing her back a little. Come on, Sarah. Even you're not that good an actress. She opened her mouth, and I added, don't insult us both by denying it. She breathed hard, eyes watering. It's not that simple. It's always that simple, I countered. You stepped out of our marriage with Mark. The man I introduced to you at a party. The man who once called me his friend. How's that for simple? She let out a choked sound, tears threatening to fall. David, you don't understand. Enlighten me, I said softly, my voice dangerously low. Explain how sleeping with someone else fits into your grand design. She tried to speak, but her voice cracked. We were talking about leaving behind the old baggage. He said we both deserve more. You and I. We've just become two strangers under one roof. Strangers, I echoed, letting the bitterness color the word. Right. So you found a new companion. That's how you solve marital boredom. Stop twisting it. She cried, tears spilling now. It's not black and white. I was lonely. You shut me out. You're always in your own head, never letting me in. When Mark listened, I felt alive again. My chest tightened. And in bed, you felt alive there too. She flinched. You have every right to hate me, but I swear, I didn't plan for it to go this far. It just happened. I stared at her, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. That's the oldest lie of all. It just happened. Fine. Let's assume it did. Now what? You want a divorce. You want to run off with him. She wiped her eyes. I don't know. I keep thinking about what I owe you. About our life. But Mark said you'd be better off with him. Mark said I'm worthless. I almost spat the words. She didn't answer, which spoke volumes. I shook my head. If that's what you want, go. I won't stop you. She stared at me. Her tears paused. Just like that. Just like that. I snapped. I won't lock the door behind you. She closed her eyes, exhaling. Then she whispered, "It's not that simple. We have a life together. Finances, a mortgage, everything." A sardonic laugh escaped me. "Oh, I'm well aware of finances, trust me." She gave me a confused look, but I didn't elaborate. Instead, I said, "Go if you want, but don't come back whining about regrets. I'm done playing caretaker." She stood there, chest heaving, tears drying. After a few moments, she turned and left the room. Her footsteps retreated upstairs. The conversation ended in a vacuum of tension. The final words hung in the air, unresolved. That night, she didn't leave. She slept in the guest bedroom, door locked. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the dark. My mind swirled with images of them, her with Mark. That kept me restless until dawn. In the morning, we avoided each other. She left the house quietly. I assumed she went to see him. The thought made me feel both nauseous and strangely resigned. I had work to do, calling Mark's broker, tidying up the last detail of the loan arrangement. There was a balloon payment due in 2 weeks. If he failed to deliver, I'd have the right to seize his assets. The power was in my hands. Somewhere in my chest, a question flickered. Why was I so obsessed with punishing him instead of fighting for my marriage? Then I realized I didn't want to fight for someone who'd so callously betrayed me. I wanted them both to taste fear, to know what it felt like to have the ground vanish from under their feet. That day, I called Mark's cell from my office phone. He picked up with a cautious, "Hello." He didn't recognize my work number. In a clipped, professional tone, I said, "Good afternoon. This is a courtesy call regarding your obligations. We need to confirm your readiness for the upcoming payment. You're aware of the sum that will be due shortly." He paused. Yes. I know. I'm good for it." "Who is this, exactly?" I gave him a made-up name, told him I was part of the financial group handling his loan. "Perfect," I said. "We'd appreciate promptness. Please note that any delay will result in immediate legal action." "Understood." He sounded tense. "Understood." Then he tried a nervous chuckle. "Hey, no worries, man. I'll have the funds." I let the silence linger a moment. Then I hung up. Leaning back in my chair, I allowed myself a grim smile. The net was closing. The last thread snapped a week later. I was working late, planning to drive home, when a text from her popped up on my phone. *, "We need to talk tonight." *, my stomach twisted. I didn't reply. I just collected my things and headed out, mind racing. What now? When I arrived, she was in the living room, arms crossed. I noticed she'd dressed with unusual care, simple blouse, jeans, but her face was carefully made up, eyes ringed with faint eyeliner. She looked tired, though, like she'd been crying. My heart lurched at the sight, despite everything. She didn't wait for me to speak. "I'm leaving," she said bluntly. "I'm not happy here, and I can't pretend anymore." A heavy, echoing silence. I set down my briefcase. "So that's it. I think we both know it's been over for a while," she said, voice trembling. "I just can't live this lie. I tried to say it before, but you always shut me down." I took a few slow steps toward her. "What about the finances, the mortgage, all that complicated baggage?" She swallowed. "I'll figure it out. I need my own place. I already put down a deposit on a small apartment. It's not luxurious, but it's a start." And Mark offered to help. At the mention of his name, the anger flared in me, but I stayed cold. "Mark offered to help," I repeated with quiet sarcasm. "How noble of him." She flinched. "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Throw little barbs. Try to make me feel guilty," she said, blinking back tears. "I've wrestled with that guilt for months. It's killing me. But I can't keep living in this house, with your resentful stares and no honest communication." I stiffened. "Fine. Get out. Go to him." Her tears spilled over. "I'm sorry, David." The words hung between us. I wanted to say so many things. *, "You're sorry now, But you weren't sorry when you were sneaking around behind my back. Asterisk, I wanted to fling that voice recorder at her feet, force her to listen to her own mocking laughter. But the wave of pain flooding me felt too big for words. Instead, I turned away. Take whatever you want, I said flatly. I don't care anymore. She whispered my name, but I didn't look back. I walked into the kitchen, mind swirling. Heard her footsteps retreat, heard the sound of her going upstairs to pack. Something in me felt numb. Something else felt like a raging torrent. Within the hour, she was gone. I heard the soft click of the front door as she stepped out with her suitcase. I peered through the window blinds, saw her loaded into the trunk of her car. She paused at the curb, as if half expecting me to rush out, to call her back. I didn't move. Finally, she drove away into the night, and just like that, my wife was gone. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions, told coworkers she was visiting relatives. In truth, I just didn't want to explain. I cooked dinner alone, ate while staring at the silent walls. At night, I found myself pacing from room to room, feeling the emptiness in every corner. But I wasn't done. The pain wouldn't let me rest. Late one evening, as I sat in the living room with the recorder in my hands, I pressed play on the old recordings, letting them spool through my headphones. Her voice, soft, teasing, mocking me. His voice, low, confident, coaxing her with promises of a bright future. I realized I was trembling with rage. My breath caught in my throat, a dull ache building in my chest. I flipped the recorder off. Enough. I'd let the storm of emotions churn inside me too long. It was time to finish what I'd started. I went to my home office and typed out an ultimatum letter in Mark's name, from the financial group that owned his debts. I told him that due to a discrepancy in his file, he had 72 hours to make his balloon payment in full, an amount I knew he couldn't possibly cover on short notice. If he failed, immediate proceedings would begin, likely resulting in the seizure of his home and other assets. I attached the scanned documents verifying it. Then I scheduled the email to send in the morning. He would freak out, scramble, maybe run to her for a bailout. But she had no resources to save him. She'd just left me. The two of them would get a crash course in what it felt like to have everything slip through your fingers. Part of me recognized the cruelty here, recognized that I might be burning any last shred of decency, but the pain of betrayal wouldn't let me stop. I wanted him on his knees, humiliated, undone by the same system he thought he could charm. If she'd chosen him, let her see what a sinking ship he was. That was my twisted logic. I crawled into bed after that, thinking I'd sleep better. But I didn't. I stared at the ceiling, remembering the day I first introduced them at a friend's barbecue. I'd been proud to show off my wife's wit and beauty. Mark had complimented her, made jokes that made her laugh. I'd felt a pang of jealousy then, but brushed it aside. Asterisk is just being friendly, asterisk, I told myself. Now that memory churned with bitter irony. By late the next day, I heard from my broker contact that Mark was in crisis mode, begging for extensions, offering to do anything to keep from defaulting. None of that changed my resolve. As the hours ticked by, I anticipated his meltdown with a grim satisfaction. Sure enough, around 7 p.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I recognized it was likely Mark, calling the financial group again to plead. I didn't answer, but a voicemail popped up, then a text, asterisk, please, I'm desperate. Give me time to figure out a solution. This is insane. Asterisk, I didn't reply. An hour passed. Then came another call. This time I answered, disguising my voice with a curt, professional tone. Good evening. Look, Mark said, clearly agitated. I can't make the balloon payment right now. I need a structured plan or something. Please, I just need more time. I paused for effect. You've had time, I responded. The terms were clear. He cursed under his breath. There's gotta be a way. I'll do monthly installments, plus interest, anything. You can't just crush me like this. I felt a savage thrill. We can, and we will if you don't comply. Then I hung up. My heart hammered, adrenaline surging. This was the moment I'd dreamed of. Him helpless, cornered, all because he waltzed into my marriage, took what I once held dear. Did I feel better, or emptier? I tried to bury that question, focusing on the revenge. He'd pay. So would she, indirectly, though I wasn't sure how. Maybe once she realized the magnitude of his financial ruin, she'd see how foolish her escape had been. Maybe she'd come crawling back, though I couldn't imagine taking her in. A few days later, I was in the living room, finishing dinner in silence, when my doorbell rang. I froze. Hardly anyone came by unannounced. I set down my fork and went to the door, peering through the peephole. My stomach flipped at the sight. It was Mark, standing on my porch, shifting from foot to foot. I opened the door with forced calm. He looked like a wreck, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, wearing rumpled clothes. He stared at me, seeming uncertain, then said, "Hey, man, sorry to show up like this. What do you want?" I asked, cold as ice. He exhaled, ragged. I need to talk to you. Can I come in?" I considered slamming the door in his face, but curiosity won out. "Fine," I muttered, stepping aside. He entered, eyes flicking around as if searching for her. "She's not here," I said sharply. "Right, yeah." He rubbed his palms on his jeans. "Look, I'm in trouble. Big trouble with my finances. You always had a good head for money. I was hoping maybe you could give me some advice." The sheer gall of it almost made me laugh. But I kept my expression neutral. "Advice?" I echoed. "The best advice is, pay your debts." He flinched. "I can't. The sum is huge. They want it all at once. If I don't cough it up, I lose everything. There's gotta be a way. Can't you help me find a solution? Maybe talk to a friend in the industry." I stared at him, letting a moment stretch in silence. Asterisk, doesn't know I own his debts. Asterisk, something inside me twisted with dark amusement. Slowly, I said, "You want me to bail you out?" "No. Well, not exactly bail me out, but maybe a recommendation, or, I don't know. You've got connections." I folded my arms. "Why would I help you? You come into my home, into my marriage, and do what you did with my wife. And now you want me to rescue you from your own mistakes." He swallowed hard, eyes dropping. "Look, I know you're pissed. You have every right. But it's not as if." "Not as if what?" I cut him off. "You didn't plan to stab me in the back." He clenched his fists. "It's not like we set out to hurt you. It just happened. She was miserable, and you never." I slammed my hand against the wall, my voice rising. "Don't you dare tell me about my wife's misery. You think I don't know my own marriage was strained. You think I don't blame myself for that. But that doesn't give you the right to snake your way into her bed end." He looked like a chastised child, face reddening, but he tried to stand firm. "We didn't mean for it to blow up like this, but it did. And now you want me to fix your mess." I could feel the rage hammering in my veins. He swallowed, nodding slightly. I barked a cold laugh. "What do you suppose I do, Mark? Write you a check? Talk to your creditors? Tell them to show mercy?" He nodded desperately. "Yes, that. If you can. And then you ride off into the sunset with my wife, living happily ever after." My voice dripped venom. He looked away. "I'm not asking to rub it in your face. This is about survival. I'm on the edge, man. I could lose my business, my place, everything. Sarah's all ready. She's torn. She doesn't even know if she can move in with me. If I go under, I can't keep." I interrupted with a sneer. "Keep her satisfied. Keep her in the lifestyle she's used to. That's your worry." He didn't answer. Then, quietly, he said, "She's not with you anymore, so maybe you could do this and let us both move on. Yeah. Those words sparked something violent in me. A savage impulse to reveal the truth. Asterisk, I own you. I own your debts, and you're paying me every month. Asterisk, but I forced myself to remain outwardly calm. I wanted to see if he'd break further. Instead, I stepped toward him, controlling my breathing. I owe you nothing, I said. You made your choice when you betrayed me. And so did she. He grimaced, tears forming in his eyes. Anger or desperation? I wasn't sure. Yeah, well, I hoped you'd at least have some compassion. Guess not. I stared at him, adrenaline roaring in my skull. No, I said quietly. No compassion. Get out. For a moment, I thought he'd argue. Then he turned and stumbled toward the door. I opened it, practically pushing him onto the porch. He spun around, and I saw the raw anguish in his face. You don't understand. I'm drowning here. Sarah's in tears every day. We're behind on everything. She left me, I said. She chose you, so live with the consequences. Before he could respond, I slammed the door shut. My fists trembled. For a second, I pressed my forehead against the wood, inhaling the faint smell of varnish. My heart pounded so hard it hurt. Then I locked the deadbolt and walked away, every muscle tense. That night, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I went to the closet, marker in hand, and scrawled the biggest line yet. Asterisk, I am coming undone. Asterisk, I wrote it over and over, large black letters overlapping. My breathing turned ragged, tears burning my eyes. Rage, sorrow, betrayal, everything converged. Somewhere after midnight, I texted her. Asterisk, you said you were leaving. Don't come back. This is finished. Asterisk, I didn't expect a reply. None came. The next morning, I got an alert from my broker. Mark had officially defaulted. I could seize assets. A final email gave me the chance to tighten the noose. For a moment, I hovered over the keyboard, heartbeat pounding in my ears. Then I clicked proceed. Legally, we'd push forward. Mark Johnson would lose his property, his car, everything of value. The system would devour him. And the man who'd orchestrated it all was me. A day passed. Nothing happened. Then, on the second day, I came home to find a note slipped under my door. Just a scrap of paper with shaky handwriting. Asterisk, David, please, don't do this. We need to talk. Asterisk, no signature, but I knew it was from Mark, or maybe from her. I tore it up without reading further. But that night, I found myself drinking whiskey alone at the kitchen table, feeling no triumph, no relief. Just emptiness swirling in my gut. My revenge was nearly complete, so why did I feel so hollow? I dozed off in that chair. Woke up stiff, with a pounding headache. The day blurred. I avoided calls. I didn't want to face the world. Late in the afternoon, I heard urgent knocks on the door. Peering through the blinds, I saw Sarah. She looked haggard, hair in disarray, eyes rimmed red. Instinctively, I wanted to hide, let her knock herself out. But something compelled me to open the door. She stood there, swaying slightly on her feet. We need to talk, she said, voice raw. I leaned against the doorframe. I told you we're done. She pressed a trembling hand to her temple. This is about Mark. Did you know? He's losing everything. I stared at her, my jaw tight. Yes. What of it? She let out a shaky breath, tears on her lashes. He said some ruthless creditor is destroying him, demanded immediate payment. He's panicking, thinks he's going to end up homeless. He can't even afford an attorney. He's convinced someone is out to ruin him personally. I felt my lips curl in a slight smirk. How sad. She noticed the expression. Her eyes widened. Wait, you know something, don't you? She stepped closer, voice rising. Oh my God, you set him up. I said nothing. She let out a shocked breath. You're behind those loans, aren't you? That's how you plan to punish him. And me. I stayed silent, but my gaze told her all she needed to know. She flinched like I'd struck her. How could you? She whispered, voice breaking. This is sadistic. My voice came out cold. You think what you did was any less cruel? She shook her head. You're not just punishing him, David. You're punishing me. Hurting me, too. Good, I said. That's exactly the point. She stared at me, tears spilling. I left you because I was unhappy, not to see you become this monster. Revenge won't fix anything. It'll only eat you alive. My throat constricted. You should have thought of that before you slept with him. She looked away, shoulders trembling. I accept my share of the blame. But this is madness. Mark is on the brink of collapse. He's in total despair. He might do something reckless. I lifted my chin. Not my problem. She grabbed my arm suddenly, desperation in her eyes. David, you're not like this. I knowed you. You were a good man, just battered by life. But if you go down this path, you'll never come back. I wrenched my arm free. What do you want from me, Sarah? Forgiveness? Pity? Not happening. She swallowed, tears sliding down her cheeks. I don't deserve forgiveness, but we both made mistakes. Stop before it's too late. My anger surged again. No, I want him to know what it feels like to lose everything, to have your world ripped apart. And if you love him, you'll share in that pain. She closed her eyes, tears dripping. If you do this, you'll destroy any possibility of peace, yours included. For a moment, my resolve wavered. But then I remembered that phone conversation, her laughter at my expense, the hateful label of suitcase with a broken handle. My fury flared again. She saw the change in my face and stepped back, shoulders slumped. You've become a man I don't recognize. Her voice was thick with sorrow. I said nothing, numb to her tears. She turned and staggered down the steps, sobbing. I closed the door, ignoring the pang in my chest. Time became a blur. The final eviction day for Mark approached. The process moved swiftly. I pictured him forced out of his fancy apartment, losing his car, maybe sleeping on someone's couch. A fitting punishment. But the night before it was all set to happen, I found myself roaming the house, pacing restlessly. My thoughts were chaotic. I checked my phone repeatedly, half expecting some last-minute plea. Nothing came. Near midnight, I went to the closet again, picked up the marker. My secret confessional. The walls were covered in words, some so angry I could hardly read them, some heartbreakingly sad. All of them scrawled in a man's unraveling mind. Now, I stood there with the pen in hand, wanting to write something final, something that captured the hollow victory I felt. But the pen hovered, and my hand shook. Asterisk, what am I doing? Asterisk. The question slammed into me with brutal clarity. She was gone. My marriage was over. Destroying Mark wouldn't fix that. It wouldn't erase the memory of her betrayal. It wouldn't make me whole. All it did was prove that I could be as ruthless as the next man. And in that moment, I hated myself for it. I dropped the pen, sank to my knees in that cramped space. My shoulders shook with silent sobs. The wave of grief and rage poured out, unstoppable. For a long time, I just knelt there, forehead against the boxes, tears burning. I felt pitiful and lost, a man undone by love and vengeance. Eventually, I wiped my face and stood. My body felt hollow, but a new clarity started forming. Asterisk, she was right about one thing. Revenge is devouring me. Asterisk, if I crushed Mark now, it wouldn't bring me comfort. I'd still be alone, haunted by the knowledge that I used my talents to ruin another life. Maybe he deserved it, but the cost to my own soul was too high. My mind raced. The eviction was tomorrow. Could I call it off? Could I unwind the process? I had legal control, so theoretically, yes. The question was, did I have the strength to do it? I found myself dialing my broker at a late hour. He picked up, sleepy. I told him to halt proceedings, to renegotiate a new payment plan for Mark. I heard the surprise in his voice. Asterisk, yes, I know. Just do it. Asterisk, I felt numb, As I ended the call, I sank into the couch, letting out a long, shaky breath. A swirl of emotions churned inside me. Relief, regret, confusion. My anger still burned, but I'd pulled back from the brink. A part of me wanted to smash something, to scream that it wasn't fair, that they should both suffer. But another part whispered that I was no saint to begin with, and maybe letting go was the only way not to drown in bitterness. The next morning, I woke up feeling exhausted, but I got dressed and headed to work. A few hours into the day, I received a text from my broker. Asterisk, it's done. No eviction. He'll get a revised schedule. Confirmation sent. Asterisk, I exhaled, trying to ignore the sense of anticlimax. Later that evening, I drove home, mind unsettled. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a familiar car parked on the curb. My stomach tightened. It was hers. Sarah. Sure enough, she stood by my front door. I got out, walked slowly up the path. She watched me approach, eyes searching mine. Why did you stop the eviction? She asked quietly. I sighed. I had second thoughts. She shook her head in disbelief. He got an email this morning, saying the creditor offered him a last-minute grace period. He's relieved, but also confused. I said nothing, fishing out my keys. She placed a hand on my arm. David, I know it was you. I unlocked the door, pushed it open, and turned to face her. Then you know everything. Congratulations. She stared at me, tears threatening again. You had him by the throat, and you let him go. Why? I shrugged, stepping inside. She followed. I realized it didn't matter. The damage is done. Even if I destroyed him, I'd still be alone, still be angry, still be me. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. Finally, she said, I'm sorry. For all of it. I never wanted this. Her voice was a trembling whisper. I stood there, uncertain. The house was so quiet it felt oppressive. Part of me wanted to lash out, to demand an explanation. Another part was just tired. Then why? I asked, my voice breaking. Why did you do it? She lowered her gaze. It started with small things, feeling neglected, overshadowed by your work, your silence. Then Mark offered attention, validation. He was fun, reckless. I thought maybe it was some harmless fling, but it got bigger. I ended up hurting everyone. I clenched my fists. Yeah, you did. She nodded, tears dropping. I know. And I can't undo that. I had to tell you I'm sorry before I leave town for good. I'm going to stay with a friend on the East Coast. I need to start over. I rubbed my temples. So that's it. You're running. Her voice shook. I can't be here with you hating me, or watch Mark spiral. I need distance to figure out who I am. I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Anger, heartbreak, pity. Finally, I just said, fine. She closed her eyes, took a trembling breath. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that if you hate me forever, I understand. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I whispered, I hate what you did, but I hate what it turned me into even more. Her eyes shone. You're still a better man than you realize, David. Remember that. I almost laughed bitterly, but no sound came out. I just nodded, a hollow acceptance. After a few seconds, she turned to go, stepping out onto the porch. I stood there, watching her leave, heartbeat uneven. Once again, she walked away from me. When her car finally pulled off and vanished around the corner, I closed the door slowly. The house felt heavier than ever, yet somehow I also sensed a release. I'd walked right up to the edge of total darkness, only to pull back. The final question, how to live with the aftermath, remained. In the weeks that followed, I tidied up legal details. Mark was set on a new repayment plan, probably never suspecting it was me behind the curtain. He still owed a mountain of money, but he had the breathing room he needed. Whether or not he and Sarah would reconcile someday, I didn't know. I doubted it. From what little my broker heard, Mark had become depressed, unsure. He might slip away into anonymity, maybe vanish to another city. I found that I didn't care anymore. As for me, I carried on. At first, the loneliness was crippling. I'd come home to this silent shell of a house. The quiet pressed in on me, reminding me of what I lost, of the illusions I'd harbored. But slowly, I made small changes. I repainted the living room, rearranged the furniture, got rid of things that stung with memories. I tore down that wall of scrawled words in the closet, painted over it with a fresh coat. I needed that new start. Day by day, the rage loosened its grip. One evening, I found that broken bracelet in a drawer. I picked up the snapped clasp and felt a pang in my chest. It reminded me of the naive man I once was, the illusions of eternal devotion. I placed it in a small box, along with some other remnants of her. I didn't burn them. I just put them away. Maybe one day I'll look at them and feel something different. Sadness, acceptance, maybe even a trace of warmth for the good years we had. And that's the story of how I was betrayed, how I nearly destroyed another man, and how I managed to step back from the brink. I'm not proud of any of it. The bitterness still visits me at night, and I still ask myself if I made a mistake letting him off the hook. But I'm learning that vengeance isn't what sets you free. It only builds another cage around your heart. I can't say I've forgiven her, or him. Some wounds run too deep. But I'm not consumed by it anymore. That, I guess, is the closest thing to victory I'll ever know. And maybe that's enough for me now. Knowing that I refuse to let the darkness swallow me whole. Knowing that as much as they took from me, in the end, I kept the one thing that mattered. The part of me that can still choose not to be defined by their betrayal. I live with that choice every day. And if the house feels emptier for it, so be it. At least the silence is mine alone. And in that silence, I'm finally able to breathe.